Okay, we've got tonight's show starring Jimmy Fallon. We've got the head writer A.D. Miles, Gerard Bradford, Mike DiCenzo. Good to see everybody. So you just finished a taping. What's the first few minutes like after finishing a taping on a given night?
Well, for me, I immediately go to a post-show meeting where we sort of just run down the show and talk about what worked. If there's any spots or trims we feel like we want to make. And that usually is very short and brief, 5-10 minutes. And then we come back and we start reading material for tomorrow's show, which can take us, usually about 8:30, 9 o'clock. So just, celebrate for about 3 seconds and then just move on to the next show.
So are you able to make, if you needed to make a trim, are you able to do that?
Of course, yeah. There's always like something where, even if there's like a flub of a line or an intro or something like that, Jimmy's really good at like resetting and remembering where his hand was or what he had on his desk and little things like that. And sometimes it's funny, we actually end up sort of leaving those things in because it's funny to watch him recover from like, those little moments that happen from time to time. But, usually we try to time the show pretty close to what we need. It's usually just a few minutes over. So trim a monologue joke here and there, but it's pretty easy.
Yeah, I've been a late night junkie my whole life, from Carson all the way through you, and I think the flubs and the mistakes are more fun than anything.
Totally. If you can do it, the recovery from either a joke that bombs or I forget what it was. About 3 or 4 shows ago where Jimmy stopped and he went to reset the joke, and then whatever the reset was in the interaction with the audience was so much funnier than what we had originally intended, and we ended up leaving the entire thing in the show. I just thought it was better.
Yeah, you never know where you're gonna get those really cool, like genuine moments like that.
Yeah,
spontaneous. But when we can keep them, we like to.
I'd like to pretend that all those flubs that end up working out are actually scripted by us because we're that in tune.
Well, tell me, let's go to each of you. Mike, we'll start with you. Of all the recurring bits or things that happen on a regular basis, what's your favorite?
I guess, thank you notes is fun because it's the whole staff, writing staff contributes to them. And so you're getting, 15 and 16 different points of view on topical stuff as well as just observational stuff, things that sort of people notice in their lives. And, Jimmy just gets to sort of make jokes about it. So it's kind of a really open sort of template for any kind of joke we could think of.
And that hit right away, didn't it? That was one of the first things that you knew was going to be something long term.
Yeah, we were, obviously looking for whatever our top 10 list was going to be, or some sort of recurring franchise. And I think Jimmy Bronson was his pitch. He was a head monologue writer for a while, and it's just the perfect sort of wide swath. You can talk about the observational stuff, like things that you notice every day, but you can pull headlines in and make topical jokes as well. And so, yeah, it was a good thing to have early on.
Gerard, what about you?
I like the thank you notes too. We do another bit called Pros and Cons, which is another one of our weekly bits, which I like writing. I think it's just one of those cool bits that you don't quite see a lot of, but it's all writing. There's no pictures involved with it to help the joke. There's no videos involved. It's just words, boring setup, punchline words on a screen. And it's cool because, there's no like fallback. The joke either works or it doesn't.
It's a challenge to sort of keep coming up with clever ways to sort of make those work.
Yeah. So as a writer, it's cool. It's cool when you can figure out how to make it work and the audience laughs and they love it. It's challenging, but it's fun.
That's our go-to on articles a lot of times. If I'm doing a voice article like I did this weekend where we're talking about each of the 4 contestants, we could just easily put together pros and cons for each one.
It works.
AD, what about you? What has not been mentioned that you love is recurring?
Well, I'm gonna sing these guys' praises a little bit. And one of the recurring bits that we do is this Donald Trump impersonation that Jimmy does. And we sort of like ask all the writers for jokes and sort of jumping off points, and everybody sends in stuff, and we kind of cannibalize the best of each one. But then these guys actually stitch that all together into a script that sort of, they are masters at getting just the right pop culture reference, you know, and meshing it with, you know, whatever's going on in politics. And, you know, for a show like ours, which is very much a broadcasting show, it's got to appeal to everybody, you know, left, right, whatever. I think these guys are excellent at distilling, you know, what we can all agree is funny about Donald Trump, whether or not you like his politics, and putting it in something that our audience will enjoy, that Jimmy will enjoy doing. Doesn't make anybody feel bad at the end of the day, but, you know, we get some good jabs in there on kind of both sides. And whether it's, you know, Donald Trump's the one, obviously, that, you know, he's probably been the best for fodder for a late night show. But we've also done it with, like,
He does Bernie.
yeah, he does a good Bernie Sanders.
Also, we do Trump, but we've had politicians like Hillary and Ted
Yeah.
Cruz come on and sort of take part in those bits. So,
Mhm.
you know, we kind of let them sort of playfully make fun of themselves. We, you know, we make fun of Trump. We make fun of everyone.
Yeah. It's true. Jimmy doing the impression has found ways to take stabs at himself as well. You know, putting words in Trump's mouth about how Jimmy's a lightweight or whatever, and it's like,
Right.
you know, it's a good, it's fun, and I think these guys do a good job at that, and it's one of my favorite parts of the show.
Oh, I enjoy all of that, and anything political. And I'm wondering, I asked Seth Meyers this a couple of weeks ago. I'm wondering, from your perspective, when you've got an election year like 2016, is it just like a gold mine? Is it something you look forward to?
It's an embarrassment of riches. It's hard to keep up. It's like every single day there's another, you know, bonk. You know, some politician does something stupid, especially, you know, with the vitriol going back and forth between both sides. It's like it's just people are they're giving us more material, more raw material and places to jump off of.
So it's almost harder to make jokes about it because they're kind of saying the things that you would think were written comedy. But
yeah, exactly.
So you have to exaggerate upon something that's already to the height of exaggeration.
Yeah, but the good news is that before the election, there was no shortage of political missteps and things like that. And the way you approach it as a comedy writer on a late night show is this gleeful celebration when you see somebody like Anthony Weiner come on the scene. It's like, you know, having a really tough time on a personal level, but I'm just like, well, sorry, man, but yeah, your name's Weiner, and you send a picture of your junk out of your phone. So thank you so much for that.
The comedy writer must really want the funny people to be elected, but the American in you does not.
You definitely are voting against your own self-interest sometimes when it comes to the comedy of late night. I mean, obviously, you know, Trump will be a headline machine, but whether or not he'd be the best president, you know, who can say?
When you've got certain celebrities on, you always like to play games. I know that, and that I think you've kind of reinvented the late night show with a lot of that. But how do you determine? Is it a big negotiation between their camp and your camp in terms of what they will do and won't do?
I think we've created kind of an environment where, you know, it's pretty much we always make the guests look good, and we have for, you know, 7 years. So we'll pitch them some ideas. Sometimes they come with their own ideas. Like sometimes they're like, oh, I would definitely want to do a lip sync, or I definitely want to do this or that. I want to do the wheel of musical impressions thing, and you know, we always want to make the guests feel comfortable and do what they want. We never force anyone to sort of do anything. I don't think there's ever like a negotiation process. We'll toss out a few ideas. They'll pick one, or they'll come back and say like, oh, I really wanted to do like the ewe sketch, and then we'll write that up for them.
Yeah, if somebody doesn't want to do something, it's never that great to make them do it anyway. Because
No.
What translates in all those bits is how much fun the guests are having, and just giving them a sort of a format where they can feel safe and act silly and have a good time.
I mean, I don't want to sound like a typical talk show question or whatever, or reporter question, but I do want to ask about Jimmy. I mean, I would think he's a great boss, but he doesn't strike me as the boss type. What is he like in that role?
I mean,
he is a great boss. You nailed it on the head.
Yeah, I think he's pretty much. People always ask about him, and I always say like, what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
And he really is that genuine, and he's just the nicest dude, and he's always, you know, very supportive and encouraging. And he's also, I'll add that he's brilliant. Like he comes up with some of the craziest, funniest ideas out of just his brain. It just works in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like there was this 2 James Taylors on a Seesaw song that we did, and he just came up with that idea out of nowhere, started singing it. And it's one of the most weirdly, strangely beautiful, funny, and weird pieces I've ever seen on a late night show.
Yeah. The show, I think the show is just, it's really like a true reflection of who he is. He's also just an incredibly hard worker.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Like when we were making, saying he's a great boss, I think most of it just comes from the fact that the energy that we get from the show is like, it comes from him in a weird way. He's like a solar power plant. It's just like, I can be tired or I can feel like the grind a little bit. And sometimes the first meeting we have with Jimmy is at 12:30. It's our first sort of creative touching base with each other. And I can be in a crabby mood or something, like come in there. And that meeting actually turns around for me, which I feel like it should be the other way around. It's like, we should be able to sort of like get him pumped up, and I'll just come in, I'll just be like, kind of like whatever was going on in my life or whatever. And then the meeting will end up making me laugh, and I'll walk out going like, all right, things are pretty good.
Yeah. He's I would say a wellspring of ideas. Pretty much.
Yeah.
He's just always pitching stuff. And as writers, it's great because you're sort of getting a sort of vibe or a sense of what, just some sort of seed of an idea, but it's always coming from this really weird, brilliant place. And then you kind of have this inspiration to kind of carry it out and fulfill that sort of idea.
Yeah, some of the most fun ideas like that are the ones where when he says it out loud, you can't quite believe that that's like something that people would really make. Yeah. And the next thing, 2 James is
that one, the one with Lionel Richie's head.
Yeah. There's like, there's like, all right, okay, thanks. We'll put that in the mix. And then it's 3-dimensional. It gets made. And you're just like, that was pretty awesome. And I never would have pitched it.
It was like Lionel Richie's coming in the show. We just brought that up to him, and he sort of like, what if I'm like singing Hello and
the Hello video,
and then his
bust of his head there, and I'm just singing it to him, and he turns to life.
His head is actually sticking out of a table, the real Lionel Richie. I mean, if you haven't seen it, you should check it out because
I've seen it. Yeah,
it's one of the funniest, weirdest things, but it just came straight out of his brain. So it's always fun to hear those little seeds of ideas and stuff, and just be like, wow, this is awesome. Like, it's fun to write those.
And he's really engaged in the material. Like, any new bit that we present him, he's excited for it. He always wants new things. So it's fun for us that he's so engaged with the writing.
All of you worked on late night before the Tonight Show. What all kind of discussions went on in terms of how you wanted to make the 2 shows different?
I feel like it was kind of a natural process. I'd say. We sort of knew we were heading. I mean, we were always kind of a sort of broad show in a sense, and that's very inclusive. And we don't really offend people. We don't really do offensive material. We don't really hit celebrities that much. We don't. So it was never really like something where we had to go from like making completely absurd stuff to stuff that's really mainstream. I think, and we when we do absurd stuff, it's sort of still feels silly and fun instead of like alienating.
All right.
But it was the process. I mean, we used to do a lot of games with audience members taking part in the game, and then when we got to this night show and we have obviously bigger celebrities and stuff like that, then we just put them into the games and stuff. So that was kind of,
it felt like just a progression of what we were doing anyway. And I think we were all conscious of the fact that obviously there was going to be a lot more eyeballs watching. But we just kept doing our thing pretty much. And honestly, the best part I think about our transition was we didn't have time to think about it.
We had 1 week off.
We had 1 week between shows. So for a while we were making 2 shows. We were making the one that was going out on the air every night, and we were doing test shows and prepping for this other one. We had a week off during which we also worked, and then literally stepped 10 feet across the hallway from one studio to the other. And I think that if we'd had a lot of time to think about it, we might have second guessed a lot of those things, but we didn't. And so we just kind of stopped here and picked up over there. And so I think that's why it felt kind of just maybe like a slightly more classy version of what we were doing anyway.
Yeah.
Any pressure at all to take the show to Burbank or Los Angeles?
I don't think that we would ever do that. No, it's like it feels so much like.
I meant when you were discussing, taking over Tonight Show.
Not that we heard of.
No, I mean, from what I've heard, I feel like it was pretty much Jimmy want to keep in New York, and Lauren was cool with that, and the network was cool with it. But we just have a sort of New York feel and vibe, and we like working in 30 Rock. It's the best building in show business. So to me, it was an easy decision, but we weren't really part of that. So.
Weren't consulted.
Well, I mentioned at the beginning we're an awards website. I definitely want to ask you about the year that Jimmy hosted the Emmys, and all of you are on the writing staff for that. Just talk us through how that went behind the scenes and the process for that.
I know that we did a big Glee parody to open the show, which
right.
we had sort of done, and we still do, sort of these big parodies, pre-tape parodies of, not even parodies, but kind of like homages to shows. We had done a Lost one, and we had done Real Housewives, and we had done one Glee one. So then we sort of that was the biggest show on TV in that year. So, I feel like we just kind of made it into a celebration of television. Jimmy loves TV. We all love TV. That's what the Emmy Awards are about.
Yeah, we worked on it for a long. I feel like at least a few months leading up to it.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of, Jimmy had a pretty clear idea of what he wanted to do during the show. I remember, I think that was year Lost in 24 and Law and Order were going off the air. He had sort of conceived this whole bit to do in the middle of the show where he would do an Elton John impression saying goodbye to 24. And
then transitioned to Boyz II Men, and then did Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day doing all the goodbye songs, saying goodbye to those 3 shows. So, we opened it with the most popular current show, and then we put in the middle that sort of homage to the 3 shows that were going off the air that we all loved. But really, I would say celebration of television. That was kind of the main driving force that we wrote to.
I think for the takeaway for me was that was the first time I ever saw something that was such a high wire act. That opening number had a pre-tape element that dovetailed into him coming into the studio, and there were pyrotechnics, and there were people he was doing costume changes, and people were handing him like a guitar, and it was like one of those things where I knew that there were a lot of professional people that were executing the thing that we had dreamed up, and watching it actually happen and watching him pull it off with ice cold veins, just doing it, and it was live. I was just I was truly in awe at that moment. I couldn't believe it, and probably lost a year or 2 off the end of my life just sweating it out. But, man,
I've probably seen 40 Emmy Awards in my life, and that's got to be either at the top or tied for the top, because not only did you do all of that, but it was the first year they split the whole ceremony up into genres, which I thought was really good.
Yeah.
Yep, that was good too.
Yeah, it's helpful for writing.
It was really just I keep hammering the celebration. We've kind of always defined ourselves by doing comedy of joy for the past 7 years. So that was kind of the first national big moment that everyone kind of saw that. But that's something we had always done and continue to do to this day.
Well, we hope to see your whole staff, the writing staff, and everybody out for the Emmys later on this year. What's it like when you all get together and go to a big celebration like that?
The prom I never went to. It's always super fun because we are here in New York, and we get to go out there and sort of meet up with all of our friends that we've known through all the years that are all out in LA. And, and because we are traveling to the Emmys, it's just super fun. We get to get on a plane, we get to go to a hotel, and it's
just funny to see a bunch of nerds dressed up.
But it's super fun. We always look forward to it every day.
Well, good luck with it. There's a lot of openings in variety this year with Jon Stewart gone and Colbert moving over and David Letterman gone, and it's going to be very interesting to see how they divide up those variety prizes this year.
Sure will.
Well, thanks very much. Good luck.
Okay, thank you, man.
Thanks for your time.
See you later.